Hare Krishna. Welcome. Bhaimi Ekadashi ki Jai. So we welcome all the devotees for the ongoing evening classes. Today is day 4 and we have been having different topics. And it was always lovely to have so many devotees coming and giving your priceless association even during the weekdays. Thank you so much. So this is a very popular topic among devotees, among newcomers, among non-devotees. The question about what is Ekadashi, what do we mean by fasting, and why to fast on Ekadashi, what do we get by fasting on Ekadashi, what do we lose by fasting on Ekadashi, and so many of these questions. So before we begin, as our style continues, let us ask around, what do you think, what is Ekadashi? What is the idea of Ekadashi? This is a very popular term among devotees. And even if you're not a devotee, if you come from an Indian background, you might not exactly know what Ekadashi is, but it's a very commonly heard term. So what? 11th day from the?
Like moon, a month is divided into two parts, like moon accelerates and decelerates.
The waxing and the waning of the moon.
So 11th day from the Purnami and the 11th day from the Amavasya.
Okay, 11th day. Let's take it like that, at both the Paksha, the Shukla Paksha and the Krishna Paksha. Yes, Mataji?
It's fasting from rice and from grains and beans. It's a purification process.
Interesting. So Ekadashi is the day when you fast from beans, grains. That's a purification process. Okay, anything else? Yes, Mata.
Referred to as the mother of advancement.
Mother of advancement.
Also known as Day of Lord Hari.
Day of Lord Hari. Yes. Ekadashi is called as Hari Vasaraha, or the day of Lord Hari. It's also called as Madhav Tithi. Tithi means the auspicious time, and Madhava is whose name? Krishna's name. So Madhav Tithi is another name for Ekadashi. What else? What else have we heard about Ekadashi? We all know that we have to fast on Ekadashi, isn't it? We have heard about it from our superiors, from our elders in the family, in the dynasty.
Gain control on your senses and
Very interesting, very nice. You fast on Ekadashi to gain control, or sense control, so to speak. Very nice. What else? Yes?
One thing is coming in my mind, like we discussed, like when Krishna gave the gyan to Arjun, that was also on one day, I think. It's like Ekadashi or something different.
Krishna gave transcendental knowledge to Arjuna. You're saying that day was Ekadashi?
I'm not sure, but something is kicking.
Okay. What else? Have you heard something about Ekadashi? Vaikuntha Ekadashi. It is one of the Ekadashis. You fast on Vaikuntha Ekadashi, you enter the kingdom of Vishnu or Vaikuntha. Interesting. Yes.
also a purification day for body and soul. So our consciousness gets purified.
Our consciousness gets purified and cleansed. How many Ekadashis do we have a month? 2. And how many Ekadashis do we have in a year? You just have to calculate. Nothing so scientific. You just have to multiply by 12. Nothing very scientific. Okay. So the word Ekadashi Upvas has many meanings, multifold layer meanings. We'll just cover 2 of them. The external meaning of Ekadashi Upavas, as we know, is fasting. And Ekadashi, as you said, is the 11th day. So externally, the Ekadashi fast or the Ekadashi Upvas means fasting from grains and beans on the 11th day. The waxing and the waning, both of the moon. The inner meaning is very interesting. Ekadasha is which numeral? 11. Eka is 1, Dasha is 10, and 1 plus 10 is 11. Interestingly, in the astrological calculation, the tithis are given names according to the numbers in which they appear. Like Tritiya, there's a very auspicious occasion of Akshay Tritiya, the third day. The day when Lord Ganesha appeared is Ganesh Chaturthi, the fourth. Nag Panchami. Odana Shashti. Advaita Saptami. Radha Ashtami. Ram Navami. Vijay Dashami. And the next is Ekadashi. You see how just on the basis of numbers you have different occasions. But the inner meaning is Ekadasha, 11. And Upavas. Upa means closer or near. And Vasa means to stay or reside. To stay close to Krishna through all your 11 senses is Ekadashi Upavas. What are the 11 senses? 5 knowledge acquiring senses, 5 working senses, and the mind. Ekadasha. And Upavas, staying close to Madhava or Krishna through all your 11 senses by total absorption in his service. Ekadashi Upavas. So sometimes people ask this question, how do you please the Lord? How do you get Krishna just by fasting? You don't get Krishna by fasting. But the process is, you absorb your consciousness so much in the service of Krishna that you put your basic needs of eating and sleeping behind your back. You reduce your basic necessities of eating and sleeping so that your absorption at the lotus feet of Krishna through all your 11 senses increases. Yes?
So Ekadasi is a means to a way rather than a means to an end. It is not the fasting itself. It is not the idea that sins are in the grain, so you skip the sin.
We'll come to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's actually, would it be better if somebody was fully engaged in a physical service, 100%, like say moving down, you're doing that, and you have to eat, you can't fast, you have to eat, but they're doing 100% of their service. Is that more, and they're fully engaged in Christian service that way, versus somebody who is fasting and therefore they really can't do their service, so they're kind of taking it easy, laying in bed, maybe doing a little bit of reading or something like that, but basically it's all about the fast.
So the question is, did everybody hear? The question is it better to eat grains and absorb your consciousness completely in Krishna 24 hours? Or eating as much as you want, but focusing completely on Krishna in comparison to fasting completely and just sleeping or relaxing, being complacent. Is that your question? Did I understand?
Yeah, I don't mean ignoring Krishna or doing nonsense. I mean if you are engaged, and you need to eat.
Right.
And let's say you can skip grains, but a lot of times I've noticed that a lot of more advanced devotees just simply don't eat.
Right. Right. In fact, this question was answered by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur in the Gaudiya Math. That during that time, he engaged all his disciples in preaching and distributing the books, Brihat Mridanga. To such an extent that he went on to say that for the sake of complete absorption in book distribution and street Sankirtan, even if you have to eat grains and break your Ekadashi, no problem. I will take this in, but continue the missionary work. But this is not to be taken out of context. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said this only once. So therefore, we cannot stick too much onto it and take that as an excuse. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur made that point, to indicate that it's more important to fix our consciousness in Krishna than to just be ritualistic. It is more important to be spiritual than ritual. Very interesting. But the higher principle is to keep all the rules and regulations intact and following the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, engage ourselves completely. Neither this extreme nor that extreme. Always balancing. Following the rules, not just for the sake of following them, but understanding the spirit. If you miss the spirit, then it simply is a ritual. And when you add the spirit, it becomes spiritual. Yes? So that's the thought process. So we covered the basics. So now I give you an option. Would you want to hear on more about Ekadashi fast from the scientific point of view, or from the spiritual point of view, or from the astronomical or the Ayurveda point of view? What do you want to hear first? Spiritual first?
Well, I'd like to hear scientific.
Okay. You always had to say something opposite, isn't it?
Spiritual, we know. Spiritual is all in the book.
Right.
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 I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Right.
I'd like to know.
Sure. So let's cover scientific first. Yes? We accept what Mataji says. We take the scientific and then we'll go to the spiritual. Okay? In the study of the DNA, everybody has heard of the DNA? The strands, DNA strands? Okay. In the study of the DNA, there's a concept called as junk DNA. All right? In the DNA strand, which carries the information about our physical body, there's a piece, part of that DNA, which carries no information about our body, which is called as the junk DNA. In fact, for a long time, scientists used that principle to say that God doesn't exist. Because if you say God exists and He's the one who creates life, then everything has to be perfect. But this is a mistake. Look, there's a piece of the DNA and it carries no information. Why would your all-perfect God create something as a portion, part of your DNA strand, but carry no information? Therefore, they called it junk DNA. And in fact, many of these scientists call that as the mistake of God. For a long time, scientists felt that cells, when they split and they redouble and like they just duplicate themselves, they can go on and on and on and on like this. They can just duplicate themselves forever. But recently, scientists came up with a new study. They said it is not possible. That cannot go on forever. Because when cells duplicate, the DNA duplicates, and every time the DNA duplicates, a small piece of the junk DNA is lost. Are we all on the same page? There's a piece called as the junk DNA, and every time the cell duplicates, the DNA duplicates, a small piece of this junk DNA is lost. And every time it is lost, your life is reducing. The size of the junk DNA or the pieces of the junk DNA which are lost, they determine your duration of life. More the junk DNA and the less the pieces lost, the longer you live. Faster the pieces lost and bigger pieces lost, you're getting close to death. Make sense? So then they came to know, the scientists said, well, the cell cannot go on forever, but can just replicate and duplicate itself maybe 40 to 80 times. And at the end of 80 such duplications, the junk DNA is completely lost and it's gone forever. But what is the purpose of this junk DNA? Scientists, through their study, they found out it is like the casing at the end of our shoelace. It protects the information in the DNA from both sides. Look at Krishna's beautiful creation. He keeps your information in the middle and he protects from both sides with casings so that your information is intact. Now, if that portion of the junk DNA is getting lost, as soon as it is completely lost, you will find that there is fusion or unraveling of the characteristics and you're dead. Yes? So scientists perform many experiments to get to know how to increase our lifespan, which would happen in two considerations, in two conditions. Please, this is just the speed breaker, so to speak, in our class because it's too scientific. And after that, it's just a smooth path. So to increase life, scientists wanted to do two things. One, reduce the rate of the cell splitting so that the lesser it splits or duplicates, the lesser the DNA duplicates, the lesser or the less frequent would the pieces from the junk DNA be lost. Right? Second, even if that is frequent, the pieces lost from the junk DNA should be very small. So that just small pieces are lost and the person can live forever or for a long time. This junk DNA in the scientific terms is called as a telomere. All right, you can search on Google, you'll find all of this. In fact, on this discovery that I'm talking about, scientists were given the 2009 Nobel Prize for whatever we are speaking. So on the basis of their experiment, they wanted to know how we could reduce the rate of cell duplication and also reduce the size of the telomere lost.
What's the name?
Telomere. It's Telomere, telomere. Through repeated experiments, they got to know that if you really want to succeed, then you have to reduce the calorie intake. It is directly connected to the calorie intake. More your calorie intake, more bigger chunk pieces of the telomere lost, or faster is the rate of the duplication, and lesser the calorie intake, less is the rate, and person lives longer. At the end of this experiment, two things came out, very interesting. First, those who eat meat, those who drink, those who have frequent sex, those who are into drugs and intoxication, at the cell duplication level, for such people, the pieces of the telomere lost are big chunks, because of which they age faster and they get closer to death. And the scientists found out those who live a vegetarian life and a sattvic lifestyle in the mode of goodness, of course, they didn't say in the mode of goodness, I'm paraphrasing, but this was the essence. Those who live in a very pure lifestyle, pure habits, vegetarian lifestyle. For them, the pieces of the telomere lost are very small, because of which they live longer, and they live healthier and look younger. So now they got a bench of different people to experiment on. And in the first experiment, they had 14 students on whom they were experimenting. So what they did was they got down their calorie intake by 25%. And they continued this research for 15 days, one fortnight. At the end, they found out that the results were really nice. Very good results, as they expected. But one problem. The students started feeling very weak. Because of which, at the end of 15 days, they went back to their regular diet. So this was good, but not feasible. After regular and multiple experiments, they got to know that this same result can be obtained by fasting for 36 hours once in 2 weeks. They were given a Nobel Prize for this, and Krishna said that's Ekadasi. "36 hours of a fast." How is that 36 hours? Sunset of Dashami to sunrise of Ekadashi is 12 hours. And then 24 hours of that day. And then you break your fast. 36 hours. So Ekadashi fast is not just spiritual, but even on the material plane, if you want to live longer, please fast. And they found for those who fast like this, 36 hours once in 2 weeks, the cell duplication rate is less, because of which the breaking of the telomere is very less, and smaller pieces are lost. And such people they look very effulgent, look younger, and live long without diseases. But this practice must be done. In fact, the scientists say this practice must be done for every individual between the age gap of 8 and 80. And I'll tell you the same sentence from the Padma Puran, where Ekadashi must be performed by everyone between 8 and 80 years old. Beyond 80 and before 8, you're excused. Yes.
Quick question. When you say fasting, is full fasting, including nirjal, is that better? Is nirjal
Okay.
better?
Okay. So types of fasting. Now thank you. You get me to my next discussion. There are different types of fasting and different notches and levels of fasting. The Ayurveda, especially in the Patanjali Sutras, if you read, it says for those who eat meat, they must fast for a month and break after sunset. Interestingly, you will find religious faiths in this world who are into meat eating, and for 1 month they fast from sunrise to sunset, and then they break their fast. Yes? You would know. You're from Karachi. Very scientific. It's given in the Vedas. But for those who have vegetarian food, Patanjali Yoga Sutras say, you must put your digestive system to complete fast once in 2 weeks. And then he gives different layers and different levels of fasting. From the spiritual perspective, the best thing to do is fast nirjal. Yes. But it's difficult because our movement is not just a fasting movement, but is a spiritually enriching and feasting movement, where the body might fast, but through chanting we feast the soul. Yes? So that's the best. Next comes those who are not able to fast completely, they are on water. So instead of nirjal, you are on nirjal, right? Jala means water. The third, if you're not even able to do just on water, then you're on water, sugarcane juice, other fluids, fruit juices, coconut water, etc. That's also not possible, then you're on fruits with all the others mentioned above. If that's also not possible, then you're on other things that we have, the other Ekadasi Prasad. And the worst is to not fast at all. So now we have to see where we want to be in this ladder. But according to the Yoga Sutras, and also confirmed by modern medical science, a full fast is not very good for the body. Because even if you're fasting, if you attempt for a fast, it's always good to keep sipping warm water, lukewarm water. Because what happens is that the digestive juices are secreted and acids are formed in your stomach, because of which they form a layer near your intestine, and that's not very good. So if you keep drinking lukewarm water, what happens is that the acids get dissolved and they're flushed out from time to time, and you're still fasting. And water is such a thing given in the scriptures that when you take water, it's considered as fasting and as not fasting also, simultaneously. Therefore, you find in the story of Maharaj Ambarish, he was doing a full fast. And he had this dilemma. Who can explain what that dilemma was that Maharaj Ambarish had? Anybody remembers? What was the dilemma that Maharaj Ambarish was facing? The dilemma. The dilemma. The dilemma. The British-American pronunciation flaw. Yes.
So he was breaking a fast. I'm not sure how long. It was a long fast. And the moment he was about to sit down and eat, and suddenly he got a guest come to the door.
And who was this guest? Very interesting guest. The one who curses for every lame reason. Durvasa. Durvasa. You entered at the right time, Prabhu, with the name of Durvasa being discussed. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Yes. Yes.
So Durvasa came with his followers and said, we'd like to be served, but first we're going to the river to bathe. So you have some time. And Maharaj Ambarish was a little bit upset. He said, how am I going to, I'm about to collapse here. I really need to break my fast. So while Durvasa Muni was at the river associates, Durvas, Ambarish broke his fast
He broke his fast with?
by sipping water.
Yes, that's the point. That's the
Because
point.
he understood, therefore, that water is breaking but not breaking.
Yes, that's the point.
It's a technique.
That's the point.
In the meanwhile, Durvasa Muni received word of this broken fast and was furious. For reasons that, I don't know, of envy or spite. But he was very upset with Ambarish and came back to him and with his anger he put it up to air.
Yes. And then goes the whole story. Yes. So the confusion that Durvasa Muni was, Maharaj Ambarish was in, is that he used to put his digestive system to a full fast during Ekadashi. And you can break the Ekadashi fast with the thing that you haven't had during Ekadashi. Like, for example, if you're doing a Nirjal Vrat, you can break the Ekadashi by sipping water. If you're having juices, then you can break the Ekadashi by having a solid fruit. If you're having fruits, then you can break your Ekadashi with sabudana or something like that. And if you're having sabudana, then you break your Ekadashi with grains. And if you're having grains, then go to hell. Because if you break Ekadashi Vrat, then you go to hell, scriptures say. So now his confusion was, Ekadashi has a paran time, the break time, which is very important. You fast on Ekadashi, and Dwadashi, there's a specific time, there's a window which you have to break your fast in. It's called as the paran time, right? So now the confusion was, the paran time, the time was ticking, and he was almost going to lose the paran time. If he breaks at the right paran time, then he's committing Vaishnava aparad because he's having something before his guest is being fed. If he waits for Maharaj, or rather Durvasa Muni to return, then he's crossing over the paran time, and then his Ekadashi Vrat is not counted. What to do? So then he consulted with Vaishnavas, senior Brahmanas, and they said, choose Ekadashi over the Vaishnava, over Durvasa. So therefore break the Ekadashi. And just to be safe, break with water, because you're breaking and at the same time not breaking. Right? So that's the point. Please remind me after this, let's discuss about the importance of paran time. Why it is so important to break during that time. You know? Sometimes devotees have that question. Yes? Okay.
Which is, for instance, if there is food or not, if you take the food with the stomach full of food, what brain senses, right? And that's the way it says it's full and eat or don't eat like this. So when we are fasting, it initiates a detoxification process. And when we are fasting for over 10 hours, then there is a cellular detoxification is effective, where cells are effectively throwing the toxins out.
Right.
So if you want a health component strongly tied to the spiritual, complete fasting is very stressful, I know, Nigel, but if you add warm water to this, basically you are flushing out a lot of toxins.
So what I said was right.
Absolutely scientifically.
Okay.
And so we should just drink it like at intervals, or you should just have it like more?
Yes, the beauty is our brain tells us you need water, just, going with those, it tells us you take some water.
Right, right. So apart from spiritual benefit, it also creates detoxification and throwing out of the waste and the acids and the toxins from the body. So, so in that way, there are, so as far as sipping water is concerned, that is one aspect. In fact, the Patanjali Sutras talk so many things, and we generally have a spiritual class, so therefore I never venture into these things. But since we are discussing that, if you don't mind, and with your permission, if I could share something about the importance of water in one's diet, not just in spiritual upliftment, but also for the upkeep of our body. The sutras say that you must never drink water through the throat directly, but you must always drink in installments through the mouth. What does that mean? It means drinking water directly. That's wrong. While drinking water in sips, swallowing, again drinking water, small installments. The reason is, it describes that the magic of human saliva is such that any scar, any bruise, anything, any wound in your mouth, right? It naturally removes all those scars. Therefore, even if you bite your tongue or you bite your inner walls of your mouth, the marks or the scars don't remain. While if you get hurt or you burn other parts of your body, the scar remains for a long time. But the inner part, it's never, because the magic of human saliva is such that just by its presence, it removes all of those. So imagine now, if you drink water, you sip water, and you let that water mix with your human saliva and go down your gastrointestinal tract. Imagine the magic that it could do inside. Acidity, ulcers, they're all removed. Therefore, if you see, none of the birds and animals would you find sipping water through the throat. They all take little drops, drink. Again, drink. We don't observe these things. Look at those birds. Look at the way dogs or tigers drink from a small pond. They take little water, taste it, sip it. Take little water, let it mix with the saliva, let it go in. And we think, oh, they're fools. They can't drink the way I do. The thing is, they don't want to drink the way you do. And it also talks about the importance of drinking water as soon as you wake up on an empty stomach. Very important. Very, very important. Because of overnight fasting, there are so many acids in your body. And you can hear them when you stand for Mangalarti. Trust me. You can hear them. The sounds are musical within. So as soon as you wake up and you drink a lot of water, it flushes them out, helps in the digestion, in the movement of the bowels, so many things. It's wonderful. But although water is so good and so beneficial, there's one mistake that we do with drinking water. We drink water as soon as we finish our meal, which is like poison to the body. Why? Logically, as soon as you start eating, the fire of digestion is burning within. So you're eating, and it's just burning. And that's the fire called as Jatar Agni, the fire of the intestinal digestion. That's what keeps the food digested and the nutrients flow through the blood. Now what happens if you throw 2 glasses of water over that fire? Extinguished. And all of that food stays inside, gets stale, and wherever there's stale food, there are microbes, and wherever all of that viruses and the germs come in, there's disease. The reason I'm saying it might not be connected to Ekadasi, but since we are discussing about water and material and, not just spiritual health, but material well-being also. So that's the point that came up. So this is the way we can fast. But at least the basic that we can start doing if you're not following Ekadasi is to keep away from grains and beans. Why grains and beans? What is wrong with grains? Any answers? What is wrong with grains? Mode of passion, okay.
What is
Papa Purusha or they?
permission to hide in it?
Sin personified. Okay. That's the point you were making. In fact, we were discussing in the morning about the validity of the presence of sin residing in grains. Interestingly, when a newcomer joins the movement, and you tell him something like this, that on the day of Ekadasi, you don't take grains because sins, Papa Purusha, although we know that's valid and authentic, when you tell a newcomer that, sins reside in the grains, if he has faith and he has a fertile heart, he would believe you. But if you're among those who are going to universities and who are too literate, they'll just laugh at you. Is that the reason you keep away from grains on the day of Ekadasi? So there's a very interesting fact that as devotees we could add in our presentation. Astronomically, we know it's the moon which affects high tides and low tides in the ocean, right? Apart from the moon being also influential in creating taste in the crops, it's the moon's attraction and pull which causes high tides. And according to research, the maximum pull of the moon is from Dashami to Dwadashi, from the 10th day to the 12th day, which means maximum pull of the moon and creating high tides is found on Ekadashi. Now, grains and beans have a very unique quality. They end up retaining water in your stomach, in your body. And not the water that's flushed out, it's just held in. And we know the human body is 70 or 75% water. Now imagine if you're taking more of that intake, which retains water content in your body, the water content increases, and on Ekadashi, the pull of the moon, forget about your body, look at the pull that's caused in the ocean. Ocean has so much of water and the high tides are caused like this. And the human body is 75% water. Think about the havoc that it can create in our body. And the more grains we have, the more water is retained, and the more pull of the moon, and there's more havoc within. Even according to scientists and doctors, they say that maximum diseases are either initiated or accelerated by having grains on the 11th day, which we call as Ekadashi. So this is like a logical flow. And of course, we have our Brahmastra of the Papa Purusha, the reasoning of the Papa Purusha. But this is just an added point. Does this make sense? Any questions on this? Does this appeal logically? Does this make sense? Yes. Who? Go ahead. Yes, totally. Therefore, not just by the moon, the body is affected by everything. Everything. Even the direction in which we sleep is very important. According to the Vedic scriptures and our healthy lifestyle, which comes down generations, and sometimes our parents or our grandparents tell us, never keep your head to this direction. Never keep your head to that direction. And we smart kids out of the university think, oh, that's all superstition. There's strong scientific reasoning behind all of that. Depending on the Earth's magnetic field, there is a north, there is a south, and our head is the north, the feet is the south, and we know the north and north would repel, and north and south would attract. And it's always good when it attracts and the body gets elongated. It's good for the body. Therefore, as soon as you wake up, you like to just extend yourself and you enjoy that spirit. But as soon as there's repulsion between like forces, it's said the pressure, blood pressure in the body increases. So when you keep your head to the north, what happens is that the head acts as a north, and this is north according to the Earth's magnetic field. You know, every magnet has a north pole and the south pole. So the north of our head and north of the Earth's magnetic field, they repel, because of which there's a contraction instead of an expansion, and that creates blood pressure, high blood pressure. These are things we end up living, but nobody tells us. So interestingly, the Yoga Sutras and all the past scriptures, so to speak, they don't just talk about how to go back home, back to Godhead. Of course, as devotees, that's our aim. But also, while living in this world, why not live in a lifestyle which is more conducive for our, not just spiritual well-being, but also for the upkeep of our body? Isn't it? Why not just follow these principles, which helps us? Prabhupada in one morning conversation was speaking to a person who happened to confess to Prabhupada that I am really sorry, I'm not able to eat the ghee in the sabji. The sabji has, or rather, it's too oily, I can't have all of that. I'm just used to eating raw food, bland food. Prabhupada smiled and he said, that's how a yogi's diet should be. Then he said, of course, opulent prasadam is good for offering to Krishna and also helps in attracting people. But a yogi has to be simple. So in this way, there are so many things. Even Prabhupada spoke about pranayama and breathing and postures and healthy lifestyle, So it's, of course, this is not a spiritual discussion, but since we are having this discussion, I thought, why not speak about all these points? You were saying something.
Yeah, so one thought just came to my mind, why are not grains that we can have sabudana, for example,
Mhm.
even fruits? So my connection is because grains have protein in them and the others do not.
The thing about fruits that's given in the Yoga Sutras is that they have a lot of water content, but the type of water content is that which is flushed out of the body in the form of urine or something. But grains, they literally hold water, because of which there's havoc created in our digestive system. Yes?
I was just going to say what you said there. Grains are glue food.
Mm.
They will trap more water than they are. In fact, they go in dry. And if you've ever add water to rice or to bread, it
Yes.
and holds that water.
Right.
Whereas fruit is simply cellulose. It'll just, as soon as the fruit is broken down, it washes through.
Interestingly, for rice, while growing rice, it requires a lot of water. While cooking rice, it requires a lot of water. And it ends up retaining a lot of water even after cooking. So that's one. Yes?
Actually, the water in fruit is distilled water.
Interesting. Yes? Okay. All right. But are you satisfied with the scientific discussion that we had? Okay. And did you like the point of the moon that you were talking about? Okay.
Just one clarification. Which way should the head face?
The south.
Only south. East and west are not part of it.
In fact, that's a long discussion. And there are discussions on how good each directions are, north, south, east, and west, along with northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. So it gets a little complex. So let's have it after the class or something like that. Or maybe when we are a little free, we can have a discussion on that. So that apart from going spiritually, we also grow spiritually. And by going materially, we also grow materially, as far as the upkeep of the body is concerned. So we covered the basics. We went to the scientific research. We covered a bit of Ayurveda. We covered a bit of astronomy. Now let's go to the spiritual significance. Is everybody ready? Yes. Okay. So now let's come to our regular Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. So the story that was discussed, the personification of grain, Papa Purusha, that Mataji covered, and even you said initially in the start of the class. Let's start from that story. In the Puranas, there's a mention of Jaimini Rishi asking this question to his spiritual master, who is Vyasadeva. And Jaimini Rishi asked the following questions to Vyasadeva, his spiritual master. What do you mean by Ekadashi? I have heard this term so many times. What do you mean by Ekadashi? Why is it so important to follow Ekadashi? And if it is important, how should we follow Ekadashi? And how should we observe this fasting? What would happen to a person if they don't fast on this day? So please enlighten me on this whole subject matter. Spiritual Master Vyasadeva smiled and he said, this question is very important because many in the future would have the same question, but very few would inquire. So thank you so much for taking the initiative, and many would be answered by this discussion. Vyasadeva describes a long story, but just taking the essence from the story, it goes as follows. That Lord Vishnu, after creation, he wanted to create a personification of sin. And the description goes in a very detailed format, how his eyes represented a certain sin, how his nostrils and his ears and his mouth and his neck, his chest all represented different sins, while his head represented the sin of killing a Brahmana, Brahmahatya. Imagine if a person has a head which represents Brahmahatya, the killing of a Brahmana, what would he have throughout his body? And it's abominable. Killing a child in the womb, having sex with one's spiritual master's wife and things like that. It's very sinful. He's a personification of sin. Now the question is, why did Vishnu create such a personality? The answer is, Vishnu wanted to create such a personality to punish those who perform the following deeds. Like if suppose there is somebody who kills a Brahmana, this Papa Purusha has to punish him by throwing him into Yamaraj's abode or punishing him appropriately. So as soon as Vishnu created this Papa Purusha and jivas were put according to the laws of time and karma, they started to sin. And Papa Purusha was in total passion and he was working very strong to fulfill and give them the rewards of their sins. Vishnu happened to visit the abode of Yama and speak with Yamaraj. And as he was speaking with Yamaraj, who was also called as Dharmaraj, one of the 12 Mahajans as we discussed, Lord Vishnu could hear loud cries, total helpless cry. It was as if animals were slaughtered. It was as if people were killed. It was a very horrible shout and cry for help. And Vishnu's compassionate heart melted. He asked Yamaraj, who is this? Who are these people crying and why are they crying? So Yamaraj said, well, you created the Papa Purusha and he is doing his duty. He's punishing those who are sinning. So Vishnu said, but how can we free those in this conditioned state of life? Those who are in this hellish state? How can we free them? Yamaraj said, I don't know. You are my worshipable Lord. You have to think of something. And as soon as Vishnu was thinking like this, the compassion in his heart took a feminine form and came outside externally. And she said, on this day, anyone who performs spiritual activity and serves my Lord Vishnu, I promise to free them from their sinful reactions. Because of which people who were suffering, they took this word very seriously and they started chanting the holy names of Vishnu. And as soon as they listened to this feminine potency and they started chanting the names of Vishnu, they were liberated from their suffering state. Vishnu asked her, who are you? And who sent you here? She said, I am your servant, Ekadasi. Dasi means servant and Eka means one. I am one of your servants, Ekadasi. He said, what got you here? She said, the compassion in your heart for the crying, suffering souls forced me to manifest. My Lord, please give me this benediction before I depart, that anyone on this day, the 11th day, Ekadashi, chants your names like the people in this Yama Loka did. Let them be free from all their sins and let them proceed towards the abode of Vishnu. So Vishnu granted. Now everybody started chanting and all were freed from the abode of Yama. As soon as this happened, Papa Purusha went to Vaikuntha and he said, my Lord, you listen to Yamaraj, you listen to those who sinned, you listen to Ekadashi, but how about me? The reason of my birth was to punish those who sin. And now you've given this counter remedy. And even if they sin, they're all going back to Vaikuntha. What am I supposed to do? Vishnu said, well, I have to search a place for you. He said, where can I stay? You said to, in fact, Vishnu told him, now there's no need. You can leave the kingdom. He said, the whole universe is your kingdom. You're Jagannath. You're Jagatpati. Where can I go? Vishnu smiled and he said, all right. The days when she is not active, you prevail. But the day when she manifests, you go and hide. He said, where can I hide? I have no place to hide because the whole universe is your kingdom. Vishnu smiled and he said, the day she manifests on the 11th day, Ekadashi, you go and hide in grains. So therefore, on the day of Ekadashi, we say that Papa Purusha, in fear of Ekadashi, or Ekadasi, the servant, compassionate servant of Vishnu, agreed to go and reside in the grains and the beans. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada, Canto 9, Chapter 4, text 29, purport. 9:4:29, purport, Bhagavatam. Prabhupada makes this point of eating grains on Ekadashi is sinful because the personification of sin resides in grains. There are many such stories. I'll tell you one more story very quick. A demon named Mura attacked the demigods for a long time and he challenged their position. They went to Vishnu for protection. Vishnu physically manifested, and in the capital city of Chandravati, where Mura was ruling, Vishnu attacked Mura. And for thousands and thousands of celestial years, they fought. They fought with swords, they fought with weapons, they fought with all the armors possible. And finally, there was a fist fight. And it is said Mura was so powerful that Vishnu began to become fatigued, tired. So just to take rest, Vishnu went into the caves at Badrikashram, called as Himavati. And he started to rest and take some break. Now Mura entered this cave to kill Vishnu. And as soon as he entered, to protect Vishnu from his left side, this servant, Ekadasi, she manifested. And with one chop using her sword, Mura's head was on the ground. When Vishnu woke up, he asked this feminine potency, how is it that you did something so quickly that I myself couldn't? She smiled and she said, because I am a personification of your mercy and compassion. I can grant liberation faster than you can. Therefore, on the day of Ekadashi, those who chant the holy names of Krishna, they reach Krishna faster than those who would reach by the mercy of the Lord. Because Ekadashi, Tulasi, both are very merciful. And Hari Bhakti Vilas describes that on the day of Ekadashi, those who chant the holy names of Krishna and worship the deity with tulsi leaves dipped with chandan, they go back home back to God, for sure. So those who are doing it, wonderful. And those who are not doing it, next Ekadashi onwards, you know what to do. So we covered the basics. We had the astronomical, the Ayurveda, the scientific, and the spiritual discussions. And finally, for the last 2 minutes that we have, let's wrap up the basic rules and regulations on the day of Ekadashi. Ideally, one day, one-time meal on Dashami and Dwadashi, and a fast on Ekadashi. But if that's not possible, we eat as much as possible to keep our body fit and fine, and engage completely in the service of Krishna through our 11 senses, Upavas. We read the scriptures, we hear the messages from the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, we associate with Vaishnavas, we chant Japa and Kirtan, preferably if possible visit holy places, serve Tulsi and the deity, and most importantly, reduce the needs of our body, increase the needs of our soul, and in the mood of humility, tolerance, and forgiveness. In a non-critical fashion, serve the Vaishnavas, and loudly and constantly chant the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhaimi Ekadashi ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Jai. Gaur Premanande.